All right, let's dive into something that can literally change every conversation you have. What if the secret to making our chats better, deeper, and more productive isn't about what we say, but what we ask? Today, we're opening up a toolkit with 4 very specific types of questions that can transform pretty much any dialogue. Oh man, we've all been there, right? Or at least we've been on the other side, listening to a friend who is totally stuck in this negative loop. They're just replaying a failure over and over again, and it feels like anything you say is just bouncing right off them. They're completely saturated in the problem. So what do? I mean, you know that jumping in with advice usually doesn't work, and just saying, "Oh, that's rough," can actually make the spiral even worse. The real puzzle is this: how do you help someone break out of that negative headspace using only a question? That's what we're going to figure out today.
You know the feeling. You're in a conversation and it's just spinning its wheels, going absolutely nowhere. It might be that complaint loop we just talked about, or maybe it's just a super surface level chat that never gets interesting, or maybe it's a team brainstorm that just keeps spitting out the same tired ideas. They're all conversations that are just stuck.
But here's the good news. There's a way to actually take the wheel and steer the conversation. And the secret, as you see here, is a specific toolkit of 4 question types. I want you to think of them like special lenses you can use to change the focus, deepen the engagement, and get things moving again. Okay, let's grab our first tool. This is your #1 weapon against negativity. They're called appreciative questions, and they're designed to do one thing beautifully: shift the entire focus of a conversation away from what's broken and toward what's actually working and what's possible. So, why does this work so well? Well, our brains are hardwired with something called a negativity bias. It's kind of like an evolutionary leftover that makes us spot threats and problems first. An appreciative question is like a manual override. It forces our brain onto a totally different track, creating this psychological safety net where we can actually start to think about solutions. This comparison just shows the difference so clearly. Let's go back to our friend who bombed the interview. Asking what went wrong just dig them deeper into that shame spiral. But an appreciative question like, "What's one thing you did right?" Wow, that completely changes the game. It acknowledges their pain, but immediately points their brain to a moment of success, giving them back a little bit of power. So here are a few ways you can build these questions yourself. Think of this as your cheat sheet. You'll notice they all have this common thread. They focus on strengths, on wins, on positive possibilities. This isn't about pretending the problem doesn't exist. It's about tapping into the resources we need to actually solve it. All right, let's move on to our second tool. This one is all about adding some depth. We've all been in those conversations that feel more like a quiz, right? Just a back and forth of facts. This tool helps you move beyond that simple recall and into some real, meaningful thinking. This whole idea is based on a classic framework called Bloom's Taxonomy. The easiest way to think about it is like a ladder. The very bottom rung is recall, which is just remembering facts. But the real magic, the real engagement, happens when you ask questions that push someone to climb higher up that ladder, to actually understand, analyze, and even evaluate the information. And here's the key difference. Recall questions just check someone's memory. What are the steps? But process questions build their thinking. Why are those steps in that specific order? See the difference? One feels like a test, but the other one opens up a real dialogue and creates a sense of ownership and deeper insight. This workplace example is just perfect. A manager could ask the recall question to make sure the employee knows the basics. But a great manager doesn't stop there. They ask that process question, that why question. And that one little word, why, transforms the employee from someone who just follows rules into someone who actually understands the logic behind them. That's a game changer. Now for a totally different kind of tool, one that's a little bit sneaky. Rhetorical questions aren't about getting an answer out loud at all. They're designed to do something else entirely, to make the other person just pause and think. You're not asking for information. You're trying to spark a little moment of internal reflection. The magic of this is that the human brain literally can't hear a question without trying to answer it. It's like an involuntary reflex. So when you drop a rhetorical question into a conversation, you're essentially hijacking that reflex to make your listener lean in and really chew on the idea themselves. Just let that one hang in the air for a second. Instead of just saying, "Hey, you need to be more careful," this question forces you to do the math. It's so much more powerful because the conclusion you come to feels like it's your own. And here's another great one. This isn't asking you to check your calendar. It's a call to action that totally bypasses all our excuses and procrastination. It speaks directly to our sense of urgency. You see, the power is in the silence that comes right after you ask it. Let's move to our final tool, and honestly, this one is fantastic for brainstorming and getting out of a creative rut. Divergent questions are your key to breaking out of that rigid, black and white, this is how we've always done it kind of thinking. Now, the key thing to get here is that these are more than just simple, open-ended questions. A divergent question gives you explicit permission to imagine, to explore a bunch of different answers, and to break free from the way things are right now. It's like saying, hey, for the next 2 minutes, there are no bad ideas. This is such a brilliant example. Asking for a pros and cons list can sometimes just lead to overthinking and getting stuck. But look at that divergent question. It's wild. By asking someone to imagine a disaster and what they'd learn from it, you're not really testing which city they like more. You're testing their resilience, their values, their priorities. It completely reframes the whole decision. And this is just a wonderfully creative, almost like a game you can play to get some fresh ideas. Instead of asking, what are our other options, you ask someone to put on a different hat. How would a detective look at this problem? Or a poet? This simple trick forces our brains out of their usual patterns and can lead to some truly original thinking. So there we have it, our 4 tools. But becoming a master of this isn't about using just one favorite tool over and over. It's about knowing which one to pull out of the toolkit for the right job at the right time. It's about being a flexible, responsive communicator. So let's do a quick recap. You pull out an appreciative question when someone is spiraling into negativity. You use a process question to go deeper than just facts. You use a rhetorical question when you want to make a point that really lands. And you use a divergent question when you need to break a creative logjam. Each one has a very clear job to do. And this right here is probably the most important takeaway. You have to mix these up. I mean, think about it. Using only appreciative questions can lead to fake, toxic positivity. Using only divergent questions leads to a ton of ideas but no action. The real art is in the balance, in reading the situation and deploying the perfect question at the perfect time. So I'll leave you with this final thought. Think about the week you have coming up. All the meetings, the one-on-ones, the chats with your family or friends. Which one of those conversations could you completely change, for the better, by asking just one of these different kinds of questions?